Picture the enormity of such a moment. Facing death at the hands of the very man who once adored her, England's queen makes ready for her ultimate day. Not merely spiritually, but sartorially. On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second bride, met her end within the Tower of London's walls. Found guilty of fabricated charges, she confronted a crucial question during her final hours. How does royalty dress for execution? This choice carried profound significance. In Tudor society, garments transcended mere cloth. They declared rank, authority, and identity. For the aristocracy, particularly in life's closing moments, attire became their ultimate declaration to history. And Boleyn, always conscious of her public persona, grasped this concept more keenly than others. Following her May 15th sentencing, she had 4 days for preparation, having been imprisoned since her May 2nd arrest. Though her clothing options were restricted, the decision remained hers. In what manner would she confront destiny? When dawn broke on that decisive morning and she emerged onto the scaffold beside the White Tower, her presentation revealed far more than royal bearing to the assembled witnesses. It provided insight into a dethroned monarch's psyche. Multiple historical records illuminate Anne's appearance that morning. The Spanish Chronicle, penned by an unknown Spanish author, represents our first frequently referenced yet hotly contested source. It describes her attire as a damask nightrobe paired with a crimson damask underskirt and a netted head covering. However, this document's credibility remains suspect. Its version of Anne's final words differs dramatically from other accounts and falsely claims her father's death followed shortly after her execution. Despite Thomas Boleyn surviving until 1539, a different account, also originally composed in Spanish by an unidentified imperial witness, provides what appears to be a more trustworthy narrative. Though incorrectly dated May 16th, this source seems to originate from someone with direct access to the events and recounts her death with remarkable precision. This version states that Anne initially shed her brief ermine-trimmed mantle. She then personally removed her English-style headpiece. A young attendant offered her a linen cap to conceal her hair. Upon kneeling, she meticulously positioned her garments around her feet, while one of her companions gently secured a blindfold across her eyes. These actions served purposes beyond mere practicality. They formed components of an elaborately orchestrated ceremony. Each gesture demonstrated poise, acceptance, and self-control. Even facing death, Anne maintained command over her public image. Her decision to discard her hood and don a simple linen cap expressed both humility and deeper meaning, abandoning royal symbols to meet death as a person rather than merely a sovereign. Additional insight comes from a Portuguese correspondence dated June 10, 1536, addressed to someone in Lisbon. It portrays Anne clothed entirely in black damask robes. The dress incorporated a white cape that fell gracefully over the exterior. Following her final address, she removed the coverings from her head. This simple gesture carried profound significance. The white cape against the black gown might have symbolized purity and grief intertwined, a concluding visual statement of her narrative. While accounts differ in minor details, consistent elements appear: dark damask fabric, pale accents, the discarding of headwear, and serene, dignified preparation for death. The symbolic layers within her clothing choices demand recognition. Dark colors conveyed sorrow but also solemnity. White suggested innocence. The ermine-edged mantle acknowledged royal status, while removing it demonstrated modesty and resignation. Anne's final presentation transcended mere sophistication. It constituted political performance. Every observer would interpret messages from her bearing, her garments, and her composure. Even in death, Anne Boleyn understood how to communicate powerfully. Her clothing selections, her deportment, and her silence during the blindfolding, all elements combined to create a tableau of mastery amid powerlessness. Throughout life, Anne had ranked among her generation's most stylish, audacious, and divisive women. In death, she remained unforgettable, commanding notice not through a crown but through dignity. Anne Boleyn's final moments represent more than political treachery or royal collapse. They stand as proof of the image's potency, individual agency's impact, and the lasting influence of a woman who made even her death outfit eloquently expressive. Despite varying testimonies regarding Anne Boleyn's execution, a unified picture of her last garments emerges when examining the most reliable sources. Though small contradictions persist, a general agreement suggests Anne deliberately chose a somber-hued gown, probably black or grey damask, paired with a brief fur-trimmed cape. Selecting damask, an expensive woven material, reflected not only her position, but also the refinement she preserved until her final moments. The cloak, delicately adorned with white ermine, served purposes beyond decoration. It represented a potent emblem of aristocracy. Ermine remained a fabric exclusively for the highest nobility. Displaying it upon the scaffold quietly reminded spectators that Anne, despite her condemnation, retained queenly status through rank and bearing. Under the mantle, her gown's design would probably have featured a square neckline, standard for Tudor fashion. Though surviving records don't detail the neckline specifically, period garments strongly suggest this style. It also served practical purposes. An open neckline eliminated the need for last-minute alterations before execution. When necklines were elevated or confining, additional cutting was frequently necessary to fully expose the neck, potentially complicating proceedings. Anne's gown prevented such delays, again demonstrating the care with which she prepared for her conclusion. Among the most revealing elements of her outfit was her scaffold headwear choice. Instead of wearing the French-style hood she had notably introduced at court, Anne selected the conventional English gable hood. This subtle stylistic change exceeded fashion. It made a declaration. The English hood symbolized constancy, custom, and national allegiance. Considering her French-influenced background and her execution by a French swordsman using French methods, this English headpiece appears to reflect her final decision to visually identify with the nation she had once governed as queen. As execution time neared, Anne removed her hood and gave it to an attendant. She replaced it with a plain linen coif, a simple cap that would secure her hair and maintain some dignity. Subsequently, a blindfold was carefully placed over her eyes, another traditional element separating the condemned from witnessing their final moments. Notably, little solid evidence supports Anne wearing jewelry to the scaffold, contrary to popular depictions showing her decorated with necklaces and rings. Contemporary descriptions generally omit accessories, and it's logical to assume such precious items were either removed beforehand or simply not worn. Given the grave circumstances regarding her clothing's fate after execution, no definitive records exist, but historical practice offers strong indications. During noble executions, garments, particularly valuable items like fur-lined cloaks or silk gowns, commonly became the executioner's property as compensation. This served as a form of tip, a macabre job benefit. Given Anne's garments' quality, especially the ermine trim and damask material, they likely were retained for their worth. When her remains were disturbed during 19th century Victorian examinations of the Chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula floor, no remnants of her original clothing were discovered. However, this absence doesn't conclusively prove she was interred clothed. Any fabric, particularly linen, would have long since deteriorated. Whatever clothing she might have worn to her grave would have been restricted to a simple undergarment called a shift. More elaborate layers, her hood, cloak, or fine gown, were probably removed before burial, though some theories propose her attendants might have preserved certain garments as keepsakes. No solid evidence supports this. The most reasonable explanation remains that her finer clothing was claimed by the executioner, while Anne's body was buried in the simplest linen, appropriate for someone who, at death's moment, had been stripped of title and rank. Through time, artists and directors have attempted to reconstruct Anne's final appearance. each interpretation combining historical precision with artistic freedom. From Natalie Portman's dark robes in The Other Boleyn Girl to Helena Bonham Carter's pale ensemble, these depictions differ dramatically in their presentation of garments, accessories, and even atmosphere. Some productions adorn Anne with elaborate jewelry and richly decorated fabrics, while others reduce her to humble simplicity. Few approach historical accuracy, with many prioritizing dramatic narrative over archival authenticity. Natalie Portman's portrayal ranks among the most faithful representations. Though her sleeves appear overly fitted and the blindfold is missing, her appearance includes a square-necked gown in dark tones, a short white fur-edged cloak, a linen coif, and crucially an English-style gable hood. These combined details create a powerful visual resemblance to contemporary source descriptions. Attire at Tudor executions extended beyond appearance. It carried deep symbolism, embedded with messages about rank, contrition, heritage, and identity. Anne Boleyn, who mastered courtly presentation more skillfully than most, clearly employed her final appearance to convey resistance, dignity, and connection to the crown she once bore. Her wardrobe transcended fabric. It became a concluding address without speech, deliberately constructed and displayed to the world. Though finer details, like her dress's precise shade or her sleeves cut, may remain lost to history, her lasting impact endures. In her life's final hour, Anne Boleyn dressed not as a fallen monarch, but as a woman resolved to control her image, even in death. Her execution marked her life's end, but her legend's beginning. The dress she chose that day became part of that legend's opening chapter.